Okay, here we are. The nature of vocabulary. Okay, what we need to think of first and foremost is how to shed light on words, how to detect words, and how to discriminate words. Vocabulary is all about words, okay? But not only are we talking about the form of words. Take a look at this example. I like looking for bits and pieces, like all second-hand record players, and doing them up to look like new. If we were to identify words, we were focusing on form. But rather than focusing on form, that is the differences between looking, look, or doing, do, or like, or look for, look after, or look at, or look into, we need to know how the words are described. We need to start categorizing words. And those strategies can help students understand the process that first of all teachers follow in order to implement a task, an activity, an assignment, or what syllabus planners do, authorities, something we are doing at the BA at the moment, or what material writers or book designers carry out in order to include words in a specific lesson, in a specific unit, or a whole syllabus or the curriculum of the school. So when teaching and learning vocabulary, consciousness raising, awareness of words needs to be fostered and enhanced. Here we have the word like, okay, and well, we have like as a verb, we have like as a preposition, we have look, in a simple tense form, present simple tense form. We have look like, which is a compounder. We have second hand, a noun made up of two different nouns, including a hyphen. And it's not the same to learn the word second and then to learn the word hand than to learn it, a link, second hand. We have the connector and with bits and pieces. But if we put it together, bits and pieces, yeah, it has got a meaning, it has got a connotation. It's an irreversible word pair. If you learned word by word, or you teach word by word, the meaning of the irreversible word pair might not be the same, plus you can't change the order of the idiom, otherwise the meaning is lost completely. You have and, to link to different sentences, or to list, different items such as record players and doing them up, a sequence. Just like the phrasal verb do, object pronoun up, a particle. You cannot say do up them, so phrasal verbs are also part of vocabulary. So, well, to take a look at vocabulary, we need to think of whatever is in a word. And whatever is in a word could be understood as, form. That is, word classes, parts of the speech. Parts of the speech, are nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, interjections, conjunctions, articles, definite articles, indefinite articles, onomatopoeias, they have got meaning. And those word classes, those parts of the speech are usually divided, into grammatical words and content words. Grammatical words are those words which don't have this main role in a sentence or the meaning of a phrase, such as prepositions, interjections, or, well, it depends, of course, but grammatical words are those that can be omitted at the moment of receiving a message. Take, for example, a situation where you are taking a listening test. You focus on content words because those are the words which are gonna give meaning. They are really strong. They have this a strong meaning, and those could be verbs, nouns, adjectives. Linguists usually divide word classes in order to plan lessons, in order to organize syllables, and also teachers for planning lessons. We also have word families. Okay, word families such as sorry. Oh, wait a sec. Word families such as the use of affixes. Affixes are particles added at the beginning or at the end of a word, such as suffixes, prefixes, and of course, whenever you use one of those suffixes or prefixes, the word changes from one grammatical category to another. You also include in a word formation by different multi-word units, which are chunks. What the experts call chunks. Multi-word units could include phrasal verbs, idioms, even collocations. You have synonyms, antonyms, homonyms, same word with different meanings, such as the word like. Lexical fields, network fields, network vocabulary, style and connotation. So we can find more things than form. We can find connections, categories, and this process of categorization is similar to the microcosm of human consciousness that Vygotsky was referring to in his work. If you can remember the presentation on Vygotsky's theory, for learning to take place, we need to go for the process of assimilation, accommodation, and more importantly, internalization. So the process of categorization of words has to do with this internalization of knowledge. Okay, so the moment we are checking vocabulary, how people learn vocabulary, how to acquire vocabulary, and how to teach it, every single theory of learning is going to make sense. Okay, so here it's a moment to take into consideration the presentations on Piaget, on Vygotsky, and in Brunner, and also Krashen's hypothesis. Oh, wait a sec. Now, regarding these grammatical words and content words, traditionally, those grammatical words were related to grammar teaching. The teaching of vocabulary was more concerned with content words, such as nouns, or verbs. But this division between grammar and vocabulary has been worked out, has evolved. They seem to work in a collaborative manner. And that's why, the three-dimensional framework of grammar proposed by Larsen Freeman was relevant for an introduction of Unit 2, because now we can see that verb patterns or phrasal verbs could be studied by means of both approaches, grammar and vocabulary teaching. So the interdependence of the two systems is very important for what a couple of scholars have called the lexical approach. The lexical approach is an approach, by the way, for teaching both grammar and vocabulary, and also to explore and to implement tasks that aim to develop the four skills. The lexical approach states three different domains: form, meaning, and use as well. According to this approach, lexical phrases are seen as chunks and other word combinations. And that's the way people should learn a language. We can include in these chunks of words or word combinations, collocations, idioms, fixed and semi-fixed phrases. Okay, fixed phrases are those that can't be changed. They follow a pattern. And semi-fixed phrases are, words that could change a bit. Okay, so when the lexical approach states that, learners need to understand words, they are referring to the form, whether the word is used in present simple, in past simple, in a present participle, ing, or in a past participle, etc. But in order to learn the word, students also need to produce, so they are presented with words, they know their form, they also go through the meaning, they need to know what it means, and they need to know how to use the word. Okay. A couple of examples for the use of words could be to learn in a compound manner the word traffic light, okay, rather than traffic and light in a separated fashion, or to learn to take care of rather than to learn the verb to take, or to learn, the idiom "it's raining cats and dogs" rather than to learn cats and dogs in a separated fashion. So you also need to include in your teaching, and students need to go through the process of learning when and why the word is used. So the context of the word is also important for teaching vocabulary according to the lexical approach, as well as specific situations for decision making to be enhanced. Take another example, will. Will is usually thought for future, right? Future simple, for instant decisions at the moment of speaking, etc. According to the lexical approach, will should be thought by fixed phrases and semi-fixed phrases, such as situations where the use of those phrases is suitable. I'll give you a ring, I'll be in touch, I'll see what I can do, I'll be back in a minute, I'll have you with your bags. Okay, so rather than including a perspective, an approach for teaching will just for the future simple or for the different uses focused on. Well, this is an approach that takes into consideration the use of the form and the meaning of the form in specific situations. And that's why, the main statement of the approach is that language learning takes place by introducing chunks of words, lexical phrases, and other word combinations such as collocations, idioms, etc. This approach emerged in the late 1990s, I think, and it was then worked out in the 2000s. Well, it's got a couple of controversies as well. You need to explore. You need to read. By the way, Harmer's paper, Harmer's work. I think it's page 74. I can't remember very well, but I think so. Let me check. I have it here. Well, anyways. Yeah, page 74. Lexical competence, the lexical approach. Page 74. But you read that, I guess. Now let's continue. How words are learned. Well, in order to know a word, students need to know the meaning of the word. They need to know the grammatical function, that is the form, whether it is a verb or noun. And they also need to know when to use it and why to use it, the words that go around. According to Wilkins, which was a very important scholar who worked with the lexical approach, without grammar, very little can be conveyed. Without vocabulary, nothing can be conveyed. So the importance of vocabulary has been sometimes underestimated, but it's very important for our lessons, for our units, and just for children, vocabulary is really important. It's a fundamental for your classes, and it should be for every single student. If you spend most of your time studying grammar, your English will not improve very much. Well, somehow. You will see most improvement if you learn more words and expressions. You can say very little with grammar, but you can say almost anything with words, especially with content words. And eventually you start constructing the form, linking grammatical words with content words so that you can achieve fluency and accuracy, of course. This is an example of how words should be learned. This is an example of what knowing a word means. Take a look at the word tangi. You know, this is a word in Maori, I think so. Yeah, it was an example set by Harmer and Thornbury, Scott Thornbury. Well, this is a different language, but it's just an example to dimension the different elements we need to bear in mind for knowing a word. Students need to know the spoken form, that is, how to pronounce it according to the International Phonetic Alphabet. So it's a very good tool, it's a very good strategy to go and study the International Phonetic Alphabet and to use online dictionaries that provide with the pronunciation, the stress, the intonation, and the example of how to use the word. The written form of a word is another element. Okay, how to write it. The grammatical behavior, for example, it's used as both a noun and a verb. It can be used passively. So this has to do with form. The word's derivations, that is, the use of derivations are, the words that emerge from a root. For example, the word concept, conceptualization, concepts, conceptualized. Okay, well, you have here another example, of the word tangi. The collocations of the word, okay, such as a funeral song, a sweet sound, the register of the word, whether high or low, the context where you can use it, whether it's a colloquial or in a specific territory, the connotations of the word, the associations of the word, uh, um, you know, uh, the bounds that the word has with other words, with culture, with specific groups of people, the word's frequency in a specific place, context, the meaning of the word, or the different meanings of the word. And you can see that, all these elements make up what knowing a word really is. How is vocabulary learned? Well, at the beginning by labeling. Okay, this is what babies usually do. They label words. Then they start mapping words onto concepts. They create concepts in order to categorize words. So the process of categorization of words is for concepts to take place. And then as a result, the creation of network buildings. For example, the word dog, okay? The child, let's say the child learns the word dog, okay? But then the child figures out that not all four-legged animals are dogs, but there are cats. So he starts categorizing, discriminating, comparing, evaluating, valuing, for the separation of meaning, the separation of concepts, and creating network buildings, such as a brainstorm, and then he starts separating cats or toys, or pictures of dogs. This is what Piaget stated when he was referring to assimilation of knowledge. First, you have the word dog, okay? You have the contact with the environment, you have meaning, but then, something doesn't fit, and then you need to accommodate, you need to change the concept, you need to stop it in a different manner and to start categorizing and to start accommodating concepts for then creating network buildings uh, and to achieve the process of internalization from the general to the particular. And then you say, okay, there are different kinds of dogs. Okay, there are different kinds of four-legged animals. Okay, and there is a big category which is animals, but I can also find elephants there, or lions, or I can divide the animals and I can find their eatable animals, or wild cats, or small cats, or white cats and black cats, or different kinds of cats. So these network buildings, start at the very beginning with acquisition of vocabulary, but they keep on working, with the L2 regarding learning. And then we might connect what we are familiar with regarding learning theories and what happens when learning and teaching vocabulary. Okay, so now is the moment to think of comprehensible input, the sonoproximal development, scaffolding is a strategy, assimilation, accommodation, internalization processes. I think those concepts need to be taken into account when planning your lessons, when implementing your lessons. You need to be aware of that, and I would like that to be represented in your classes, in your plannings. Now, how to remember words? Okay, once you go for the learning or acquisition process, how can students remember words? Well, words are remembered by means of a short-term store. That is by means of repetition, or an example could be when you're trying to learn a phone number that you're giving and you don't know how to write it, and you don't have anything to save the number. So you need to start repeating the number 2288 522245, so that, and you constantly repeat it so that you can remember the word. And the moment you have the possibility to write it down, you start and you write it, or you save it in your mobile phone as well. But you keep on repeating the same number and the same number so that you can remember it. Now, once you save it and you do anything else, let's say 5 minutes later, some people might remember, but some others might not remember the number. I'm one of them. This is the short-term store. Now, there is this working memory stage that can be worked out by the use of mnemonics, flashcards, long-term memory by means of repetition, the use of the words, the feelings that emerge from the use of the words, the concepts around the use of the word, emotions that you feel, the affective domain of the words. That has to do with the long-term memory. Now, the factors that have impact on remembering words could be your motivation, your learning styles, the way you organize words, the way you categorize information, how you organize your time, that has to do with the awareness of the language, metacognitive strategies for learning to take place. So it's not only about the implementation, but it's also an individual process for remembering words. If you work on learning styles, motivation, and metacognitive strategies, students are likely to remember words in an efficient manner. Of course, you as a teacher can enhance the remembering of words, but students also play a paramount role according to the lexical approach and according to Thornbury and they agree with the fact that learners play an active role in vocabulary learning. Okay, it's a great part of the process has to do with the student's performance, the student's behavior, and the student's attitude. So it's a great responsibility, the one by the student, but you can enhance it by means of, you know, the implementation of your tasks, including motivation, learning styles, diversity, and the use of different strategies. If you can remember, well, some of you were my students in the strategies course. We started the course with a couple of tasks for using the International Phonetic Alphabet, and then we used the dictionary for solving problems. We explored a very common vowel sound, which was the schwa, and then we decided to keep a journal and write an entry each week, each session, to write a vocabulary chart, to design flashcards, to work on metacognitive strategies for self-awareness and self-recognition, you know, and all those processes, you know, were aiming to achieve this strong basis for remembering words, and for remembering and for working with grammar as well, for patterns, for modules, and also for recognizing use, working with cultural affairs, you know, culture diversity. This is a good example of, you know, how to implement a variety of things for students to remember words. Now, the pedagogical implications for learning vocabulary, for presenting vocabulary, for practicing it. Well, students need tasks and strategies to help them organize their mental lexicon by building networks of associations. The more the better. Okay. Categorization has to take place. And how are you going to enhance that? Well, by means of, you know, the implementation of your tasks. Words need to be presented in their typical contexts so that the students can get a feel for their meaning, their register, their collocations, and their syntactic environments. Teaching should direct attention to the sound of new words, particularly the way they are stressed. Okay, there are different kinds of activities for this to be noticed. Okay, noticing plays a paramount role here. Learners should aim to build a threshold vocabulary as quickly as possible to start organizing words. Learners need to be actively involved in the learning of words. That's something we also explore. Learners need multiple exposures to words, comprehensible input, and they need to retrieve words from memory repeatedly, recycling words. Yep. Somebody there? Now, learners need to make decisions about the word. Memory of new words can be reinforced if they are used to express personally relevant meanings, meaningfulness, okay, significance of words and contexts, so that the students can appropriate words, so that internalization can take place. Not all the vocabulary that the learners need to be taught. Learners will need plentiful exposure to talk and text, as well as training for self-directed learning, for autonomy. Now, regarding teaching, well, what are the resources for vocabulary input? Well, lists, vocabulary charts, flashcards, course books, vocabulary itself, texts, teacher, the instructions, the intonation you got, the pronunciation you got, texts, dictionaries, corpus, that is corpus, a compilation of texts for language learning, specifically for language learning, word cards, memory cards, pictures, pamphlets, etc. Lyrics. How to present vocabulary, okay? The first stage for the PPP approach, okay? Presentation, practice, production. How to present vocabulary. Using translation, that's one possibility, the traditional one. Of course, if everybody's sharing the L1, but if English is working there as a lingua franca, and if you are in a second language learning context, while translation might not be an option. Illustrating meaning, explaining meaning, highlighting form, and involving learners. This is the way you present vocabulary. And now you can remember the different approaches we have, inductive and deductive approaches. Okay. Illustrated mean you will have pictures, you know, for students to check the meaning of the word. Explaining meaning, you know, giving a detail, a procedure for the rules of the word, highlighting form, noticing strategies, involving learners, the induction or deduction strategies for learners to understand form. Now, what do you need to consider for planning a task? The language level of the students, beginners, intermediate, advanced, upper intermediate, or elementary, etc. This is something you have already done in your previous task. Next, the students' likely familiarity with the words, what they previously know, what they are about to know, you know, the difficulty of the items, of the words. For example, if they express abstract rather than concrete meanings, or whether they are difficult to pronounce. The number of words to be taught in a lesson, scholars, we should include 12, you know, well, around 12. Their teachability, if they can be easily explained or demonstrated, okay? And if the words are being learned for production in speaking and writing, or for recognition only for listening and reading, okay, productive or receptive skills, since more time will be needed for productive skills, okay. the number of words needs to be fewer than if the aim is only for recognition. Okay, for recognition, that is for receptive skills, you could use a bit with more words. Now, the sequence of presentation of words. This is the sequence that we should follow. We have two different options. On the one hand, you have explain meaning first and then explain form. What happens if you follow this approach, this sequence? Well, this is an example. You hold up a picture of a shirt, okay, the meaning, and then say, after showing the picture, you say, it's a shirt. Now you provide with the form. This creates a need for the form, okay? So when the student takes a look at the picture, they need to be provided with form. You're opening the appropriate files for students to achieve both meaning and form. This is usually what happens with a couple of approaches, such as the total physical response. On the other hand, you have form first, then the meaning. And you go the other way around. You say shirt a number of times. You have students repeat the word, such as the audiolingual method, and point to the picture, okay? After saying the word, after repeating the word with a couple of drills, you show the picture of a shirt. In this case, words are presented in some kind of context. So the context now is included. Learners can work out the meaning for themselves. Okay? So both of them are valid. Both of them are effective. It all depends on the situation of your task, on the situation of your lesson. Now, the next stage, the second one, which is practice, how to use the words. Well, you need to activate students' schemes, okay? You need to take into consideration the words that they previously know. How you're going to work on those words, and how are you planning to add more words to what they previously know, okay? This is usually done by means of, warm-up activities and getting students involved. Now, integrating new knowledge into all integration activities. After the warm-up, you have a presentation, but then you have a lead-in, okay? So that previous knowledge can be linked with the new knowledge, with the new words. You can also employ decision-making tasks, such as identifying words in text, selecting words matching words and meaning, sorting, ranking, and sequencing. Decision-making tasks are very effective for practice, and you are trying to develop higher order thinking skills at the same time, and for training problem solvers. Production tasks, such as the use of the words, games can also work for practice. Now, teaching word parts and word chunks. Teaching word formation and word combination. You can make use of affixation, compounding, that is suffixes, prefixes, compound nouns, multi-word units such as irreversible words, idioms, even phrasal verbs. A lexical approach, chunks of language, semantic syllables, which is called semantic syllables, where everything is planned for vocabulary, functions, meaning, focus on meaning rather than form. An example of this could be task-based learning. You know, you're taking these current methods and approaches for teaching English. You might be familiar with TBL, task-based learning. Teaching lexical chunks, consciousness raising, noticing techniques for patterns and regularities, and fixed and semi-fixed chunks. Teaching word grammar. An example could be how to teach the two similar verbs such as say and tell. They follow different patterns. Okay, say plus that, or tell object pronoun to. So this is also included here. Teaching phrasal verbs, well, consider as language in use with different particles. Teaching idioms using metaphors, irreversible words, or different kinds of idioms. Context needs to be included in the teaching process. And finally, how to test vocabulary. Well, we're not going to focus in depth on testing, assessment, and in checking, because we won't have enough time. You know, I think you will have the opportunity to check how to evaluate the whole evaluation approach. If you take the learning experience of teaching children, or teaching English through literature. But in the course of methods and approaches, you might have the opportunity to take a look at evaluation in a more holistic way. We're just going to provide with a couple of ideas that Harmer and Thornbury suggest, such as the reasons why to test. Well, because feedback is beneficial for both teachers and students. For recycling words. And how is this beneficial for teachers? Because you can carry out action research for your professionalization, for your professional development, for growing up as an educator, for growing up as a professor. And this is a constant and permanent exercise you need to carry out in your classroom for improving your teaching. For developing students' work competence and for motivation to take place. What do we need to test when we are teaching vocabulary? Well, vocabulary size, the amount of words that students learn, and word knowledge, competence, that is whether they are able to use the words properly in context. And how do we test them? Well, we have progress tests, placement tests, diagnostic, achievement, and proficiency tests. And we could follow different approaches, non-referencing, criteria referencing. We should also follow formative assessment or summative assessment. So it all depends on the approach. Yeah, it all depends on the approach, and that's why evaluation is part of the course. Current methods and approaches for teaching English. But you could check this information if you read Harmer and Thornbury, How to Test Vocabulary. Now, your tasks for weeks 8 and 9. It's going to be a task focused on presenting vocabulary. First of all, you need to do an infographic. This infographic activity is on Eminos. I'm gonna show it. I'm gonna show it to you in a moment. You also need to carry out Eminos activity 8, presenting vocabulary. It's also there on Eminos, and you need to participate in Form 5, presenting vocabulary. Okay, the infographic is 5%. The Eminos activity and the forum is 10% in total. Sorry for the spelling mistake here. Vocabulary. Plan and create a vocabulary teaching video. I'm going to explain that to you in what follows. Okay, you will need to upload your vocabulary teaching video to YouTube as well. You will have to participate in a forum. You will have to provide with feedback, and the due date for handing in the activities is Friday, November 20 at 12 in the afternoon. Okay, these are the references, Harmer and Thornbury. You have the books. I send you both books, and you can find them on the web. You can find them on Eminos as well. They were attached to the tasks you need to carry out for this week. And well, thank you very much for listening to the presentation. Now, what I want to do is to show you the tasks. Okay, let me go to, I'm gonna share with you the Eminos platform. Just give me a sec. I'm gonna show you the Eminos platform. Yes. Okay. You have Eminos. This is the content of the course. You go to Unit 2. You have Unit 2. You have the nature grammar. This is the session we had. This is the activity you just carried out, and I check it on Monday. I send you your scores. Then you have the Harmer's paper on grammar, teaching grammar in a communicative classroom. Okay, that was already covered. And this is one of your tasks. How to teach vocabulary by Thornbury. Read the attached Thornbury's chapter 2, How Words Are Learned, from page 13 to 32. Here you can download it. After reading, designed an infographic based on how words are learned according to Thornbury and your own ideas, and including the information we just attended in the presentation, of course. Upload your infographic to the Drives folder named How Words Are Learned. If you go to Google Drive folders, you will find here evidence. Let me click it. It's loading. Hold on. Here it is. How Words Are Learned infographic. You click it twice. Okay, it's loading. Well, and here you create a folder with your name and you place your infographic there. Okay. Some people have already done this very well. Okay. Now, after that, this is 5%. After that, you go for Activity 8, presenting vocabulary. You have an introduction of vocabulary here. Then you need to read Harmless chapter 14. You have already done that, I'm sure. It was for today. Page 74, which is focused on the lexical approach. Then from page 29 to 229 to 241, how to introduce vocabulary, the presentation, practice, and production approach, the examples provided for presenting and practicing vocabulary. You have a lot of lesson plans there for you to check. Plenty of examples for vocabulary games, using dictionaries for your activities, for your tasks. And then read Thornbury's How to Teach Vocabulary book from page 163 to page 177. He gives clear examples of tasks that might be useful for you to take into account, okay, for your task. Now, after reading, you're gonna think of the following challenges that students face when learning the English language and vocabulary specifically. Making the correct connections of words when understanding the second language between the form and the meaning of words, including discriminating the meanings of closely related words. Okay, this is what we check in the presentation. Another challenge that you need to take into account is when producing language, using the correct form of a word for the meaning intended. Okay, just like the example I provided with like. Okay, I like reading just like my father does. Okay, so discriminating the use and the meaning of like. Next, plan and design a vocabulary learning series of activities that at least presentation and practice. Okay, at least. But if you can go for presentation, practice, and production, it might be better. Okay. You decide the kind of vocabulary you want to work with. Free lexical chunks. Okay. It's up to you. Verb patterns, idioms, or house-related vocabulary, or I don't know, relatives-related vocabulary, family tree. I don't know. You decide. Plan and design this series of activities to meet the challenges for learners, the challenges we discussed previously, for learners to acquire a critical mass of words, remember around 12, for use in both understanding and producing language. Remember words over time, long-term, store, and be able to recall them immediately. Okay, explain how you're how are you going to enhance that, you know, in your lesson plan, in your activity plan or task plan. Include at the top of your plan and design the general information such as the learning variables, the classroom management elements, timing, and all the information you included in the previous task, if you can remember. Okay, information that is important to be considered for planning tasks. Once you have already planned and designed, you need to upload your plan to the activity section on Eminus, okay, in a Word file. For following a format, well, you're free to follow your own style, your own creativity, of course. But if you need examples, well, make sure you read Harmer's examples, okay? Harmer's examples from page 229 to 241. Number 5, you need to create a teaching video. Okay, I guess you can organize your time, between Monday and Wednesday and Friday morning. 5 minutes long video, more or less, between 5 and 10 minutes, where you try to teach vocabulary. You don't need to be an expert with technology. It's not our area of expertise, of course. I understand that. It's just an attempt. We're just giving it a go. Your video should be addressed to a specific audience. You need to decide whether for children, and it has to be stated in your lesson plan, in your activities planning, children, teenagers, young adults, adults. And you should be careful with the language level you decide to work with. Elementary, beginner, or B1, B2 plus, I don't know. Include the activities for them to carry them out at home, okay? It's a teaching video. The activities for them to do could be online activities or traditional activities. It's up to you. And take into consideration that your potential students, the students who are going to watch your video, will be able to check your teaching video as many times as necessary. Okay, so that's why you will only need for about 5 to 10 minutes, because the students' work is going to be at home. Okay, it's going to be a teaching video. Upload the video to the YouTube platform and share the link to the forum how to teach and learn vocabulary. Sorry, it's not called that way. It's called presenting vocabulary. That's my bad. Share the link of your video to the forum presenting vocabulary and follow the instructions of participation there. And that's gonna be it. Okay, that's gonna be for Friday 20, next Friday at 12. And I'm gonna be checking your work from 12 to 5, more or less. Okay, hopefully. And wait a sec. Okay, good. Now, does anybody have a comment, please? Does anybody have a comment or a question? I'm listening to you.
This time we don't have to do a three-dimensional framework, right? Like the one you showed us in this class?
No, you don't. No, you don't. It was just for grammar. This time you just need to plan it. And I guess the only difference now is that you're not gonna teach, technically, but you're going to try to create a teaching video. Yeah,
Okay.
somebody.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Daniel.
Yeah, also the topic about vocabulary can be whatever we choose.
Of course, you choose whatever the lexical construction you wish, the lexical chunks you want to work with. Just take
Okay,
into consideration level and be consistent. Level and audience.
okay, okay,
You
perfect.
decide. Does anybody else have a question or a comment? Or does anybody have a suggestion? I'm open, to make changes for the task. If you have any suggestions. we can negotiate and reach agreement together. Do you think that's all right? Is it doable?
I
Well,
think
no.
it is.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Thank you. Yeah, Fernie? Somebody raised their hand. Yeah, Fernie, go ahead. I think you need to turn on your mic. Yeah, Fernie, go ahead. Well, or you can write it on the chat. Well, if you don't have any more comments or questions, I guess we can stop the presentation here. I'm gonna stop recording the session.